melody. I raise a hallelujah. Heaven comes to fight for me. And I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I raise a hallelujah with everything inside of me. I raise a hallelujah, and I will watch the darkness flee. I raise a hallelujah in the middle of the mystery. I raise a hallelujah. Fear, you lost your hold on me. And I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Sing a little louder. Sing a little louder. Sing a little louder. Sing a little louder. Sing a little louder in the presence of my enemies. Sing a little louder, louder than the unbelief. Sing a little louder, my weapon is a melody. Sing a little louder, heaven comes to fight for me. Sing a little louder, and I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Oh, I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. And louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive.
Good morning, church, and welcome back to Papster at your place. Happy Sabbath, and it is great to see you here with us again this morning. I hope you've had a great week. It has been a pretty chaotic week. Lots going on, lots of things to think about. If you've been affected this week, really thinking of you. If you've been in isolation, if you've had to get tested, if you've been waiting in long lines, really thinking of you, and all of us have kind of been in that boat this week. So it has been kind of crazy, but I hope you are okay. I hope you're doing well, and you are not alone. We are all in this together. But it is great to just come at the end of the week to just sit down and to be reminded of the important things like connecting with each other and connecting with God. So I'm so glad you're here, and it's going to be a beautiful service together today. Last week we made the announcement that we will not be opening our church building for a little while, as we have decided not to ask for vaccine passports. So instead we will be meeting in smaller groups in homes, like life groups, and we will be resourcing you with the things that you need for that group. We will still be putting together a mini kind of version of Perhaps at Your Place for you and your group to watch and then discuss directly after watching. So we did announce this last week, and we asked you to start getting your groups together. So this is just another reminder again to do that. Have those conversations if you haven't already, and get your group together, as we will be trialing this very, very soon. So if you aren't in a group already, and you're having trouble finding one, please get in touch with us at church, any one of our staff, and we will be able to link you into a group. There will be groups running at church in the building, separate groups of 25 or less that anyone is able to join. So we'll get that information out to you this week, as those will be starting soon. But there will be plenty of options for everyone, and we really, really want everyone to be connected in. So make sure that you are getting with your life group. If you don't have one, we will link you up with one so that everybody can be part of a group. And we are so excited to start to meet together again. I know Epic and 360 would have sent messages out this week about when they will be meeting, which is really soon as well, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. But it's great, it's really exciting, and we just can't wait to see you. Another little reminder before we get on with our program is that we are still able to give. Even though we are only meeting online, we are still able to give our tithes and our offerings. So if you'd like to do that, here are the details of how you can do that on the screen right now. If you're having trouble with doing this online, please get in touch with us at the office. We would be happy to help you out with how to do that. But today we have another awesome program lined up for you. We have some more music coming from our awesome worship team. We have Epic Time coming up next. But today we are in our second installment of our new series, New Year, New You. And Karyn is speaking to us again, but today she's speaking to us about renewing our thinking, renewing our minds, and what a fitting topic for the beginning of a new year. So I know that's going to be awesome, and cannot wait to hear what you have to share with us today, Karyn. But before we get into that, it's time for Epic Time. So let's check it out now, and I'll see you a bit later on.
Oh, who are the people in your neighborhood, in your neighborhood, in your neighborhood?
Hi, it's me, Debbie here. Well, it's such a beautiful day that I thought that me and Paddy will come out and do a bit of fishing. Well, Paddy's just having a drink, but I'm going to let my rod down and do some fishing here. And it just so happens that our story for today is about fish and bread. And you know, when you're fishing, sometimes if you sprinkle little bits of bread into the water, the fish will come up and nibble on it, and then you can catch them just like that. You're going to have a little bit of bread too, are you, Paddy? Good girl. All right, well, let's see what I catch here. Oh, it looks as though I'm getting something. The rod's all taut there. It's getting tight. All right, well, we're going to have the song next, and we'll come back a bit later and see how I go.
You are the one, the only one who's always faithful and true. Faithful and true. Nobody else compares, there is nobody faithful and true. Nobody else compares, there is nobody like you. Oh, and I can't stop thinking about how amazing your love is, amazing your love is. I can't stop giving it out, I was made for this. Everywhere I go, I can't stop sharing your love. Everywhere I go, I'm reaching out for someone just like you do for me. You give your love for free. Everywhere I go, I can't stop sharing your love. Everywhere I wanna love the way you love. I wanna see the way you see. I wanna give the way you give, because the love that you're giving to me. Everywhere I go, I can't stop sharing your love. Everywhere I go, I'm reaching out for someone just like you do for me. You give your love for free. Everywhere I go, I can't stop sharing your love. Everywhere I go, I can't stop sharing your love. Everywhere I go, I'm reaching out for someone just like you do for me. You give your love for free. Everywhere I go, I can't stop sharing your love. Everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. Everywhere I go.
Oh guys, here I am. I'm still trying to catch my fish and it's on the end of the line and I can see it flapping in the water. But oh, it's really hot work. Okay, right, well we're going to go to our story now and hopefully once we finish the story, I'll have the fish for you. Okay, here we go. Oh,
This is the story of how one day Jesus was teaching a big crowd of people. On this particular day, the crowd was about 5,000 men. Back then, they only counted the men for some reason, so really if you counted the women and the children, the crowd would be like 15 or 20,000. And really we should count the women and the children, especially the children, because in this story there's even a little boy, and he's a child, so I don't even know why we didn't count him. Anyway, on this particular day, there were lots and lots of thousands of people. Oh, and as a side note, you can read about this story in the Bible, in Matthew 14, or Mark 6, or Luke 9, or John 6. As a side note to that side note, this is the only miracle in the Bible recorded in all 4 Gospels. So that probably means it's super important and we should be able to learn something. Anyway, Jesus had been talking to this huge crowd of people all day long. See, sometimes when Jesus was speaking, people just lost track of time. They couldn't stop listening to Jesus. They wanted to hear everything that he had to say. But come on, all day is a really long time to just sit and listen. And these people were getting hungry. So the disciples went to Jesus and said, "It's getting late. Maybe we should let these people go home so they could get something to eat." But Jesus said, "They don't need to leave to get something to eat. You can give them food to eat." What do you think the disciples were thinking just then? Pardon me, but what food? They didn't bring any food with them. And it's not like there were any restaurants or grocery stores nearby, although that would be pretty neat if there was like a restaurant right there in the side of the hill, right in the middle of all those people. Anyway, the disciples were looking around for some food. Remember that boy I told you about? Turns out this one boy had some food, but it wasn't like a food truck or anything. It was just his own little lunch. 5 pieces of bread and 2 small fish. Definitely not enough to feed a crowd of lots and lots of thousands of people. But Jesus was about to do something amazing. He took the bread and the fish and he thanked God for it. Pretty simple stuff, right? But then he started to split it up and pass it out to everybody. Everybody. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Time out. What the actual crazy do you think was happening inside the disciples' heads just then? What in the world was Jesus even doing? Did he really think that he was going to be able to feed thousands and thousands of people with only 5 pieces of bread and 2 small fish? It must have seemed impossible. But what the disciples didn't know is that when Jesus prayed this prayer of thanks, he was talking to his dad in heaven. And his dad in heaven is God, the one who created all the fish in all the oceans, the one who, at the beginning of time, created everything out of nothing. So making some lunch for some people was no big deal. Actually, it was a big deal because these people would have known the story of the Israelites wandering in the desert really well, and how God had provided for them for 40 years with manna, which is kind of like bread, except it's really small, so it's more like cereal, and it fell from the sky, and boy, that would be super sweet to have like cereal falling from the sky, but it would also freak me out a little bit. And there was also quail when the Israelites were wandering in the desert, and quail are like these tiny little birds. Actually, they're not tiny, they're like regular birds, and birds are already tiny, so they're still tiny, but maybe not as tiny as you would have thought. Anyway, the food that Jesus prayed over and handed out was being passed around, and people were eating, and eating, and eating. And the craziest thing happened. Even though they kept handing out bread, they never ran out of bread. And even though they kept handing out fish, they never ran out of fish. All these lots and lots of thousands of people ate as much as they wanted, and there were still leftovers. 12 baskets of leftovers. What? How does that even work when they started with so little? Not only did Jesus feed these people dinner, he gave them more than they needed. Leftovers. When the people saw Jesus do this miracle, some of them were convinced right then and there that he was the king and the rescuer that God had promised so long ago. And while it was probably pretty wild to see Jesus take these 5 pieces of bread and 2 small fish and feed lots and lots of thousands of people, it wasn't crazy at all for Jesus. It was easy. He would keep doing greater and greater miracles than that, including the greatest rescue the world would ever see. I can't wait for you to hear that story.
Wow! Imagine what it would have been like for the boy in the story. When he showed up to see Jesus, there was no way he thought that he would be part of such a huge, important miracle. But when he offered his bread and his fish, Jesus used it to feed thousands of people. You know, we all have things we can share too. You might think that what you have to offer seems small, but God can work through you in amazing ways. He can help you use what you have to help others. You know, you've got 2 ears. That means that you can listen when someone needs a friend. And you've got 2 hands. That means you can help your mum or dad clean up around the house. And you've got a mouth. That means that you can speak kind and encouraging words to make someone's day. Think about what you'd like someone to do for you, and then do that for someone else. Use what you have to help others. Well, I'm going to continue enjoying the sunshine today, and I hope that you can too. Oh, before I go, I caught my fish. You want to see it? Okay, here we go. Here it is. Ta-da! I'm going to share this with my family now. So I'll leave you with this month's memory verse. How about you read it together with the people you are watching with? Enjoy! Ka kite anō. Last week we talked about blame. And we talked about blame because it allows us to smuggle our issues, our addictions, our insecurities, and our dysfunction into our future. And I'm not sure why, but we seem to want to sneak things that sabotaged our previous relationships, our previous business deal, our previous mess into our future. Why do we want to do that? Owning it means that we take full responsibility for whatever our part was and whatever it is that we are having to restart. And it's difficult. It's difficult because we often get no sympathy when we own it. But when we do own it, we take a step forward. It's one of the ways that we ensure that next time won't be like last time. And today we move on to the next step of that journey to a new us, which is to rethink it. Now here's what I mean by rethinking. When we think back about the thing that we maybe want to restart, whether it's relational or financial, professional or academic, whatever it might be, at some point along the way, even if it wasn't our fault, even when it's hard to find anything to take responsibility for, at some point, as we think back and as we move forward, we must ask ourselves this question. What was I thinking? Everyone told me that he wasn't right for me. What was I thinking? Mum said that she's not the one and gave me a list of reasons, and I said, yeah, but I love her. And Mum said, but what do you love about her? And I realised I couldn't come up with anything. What was I thinking? 0% down and no repayments for 4 years. I should have seen it coming. What was I thinking? 30% return, guaranteed. It was too good to be true. What was I thinking? How in the world did I end up with so much credit card debt? What was I thinking? And here's the really interesting thing. When we look back, our decisions don't even make sense to us. And that's when we often look back and we say, I should have seen this coming. What was I thinking? But in order to make sure that next time isn't like last time, we have to ask the question, what was I thinking? But here's the catch. And it's what I want us to talk about for a few minutes today. I think all of us intuitively ask the question, what was I thinking? But very few of us sit with that question long enough to come up with an answer. It's just a statement. What was I thinking? And on we go. What was I thinking? But we jump right back in. What was I thinking? But, oh, she's really cute. What was I thinking? I think I'll just lease another one. What was I thinking? I can't emphasize this enough. Stopping to come up with an answer to that question is the key to ensuring that next time won't be like last time. And here's why. If you think the way that you used to think, you'll do the things that you used to do. It's just that simple. If we keep thinking the way that we thought last time, chances are history will repeat itself. Maybe even in an area where very little of the blame belongs to us. So today we're going to look at a passage that highlights the importance of this. It's found in the book of Romans. We call it a book, but it's actually a letter that a guy named Paul wrote to Christians in Rome. And Rome wasn't a very safe place to be a Christian. So Paul is writing to those living under the oppression of the Roman Empire. It's important to also know that Paul was somebody who understood the importance of starting over. Paul had to start over himself.
He lived with the consequences of his life before he became a Christ follower. See, in his previous life, he had tried to stamp out Christianity altogether. He put innocent people in jail. He was responsible for the death of Christians who'd done nothing but put their faith in Jesus, just like he would eventually do. He understood this, which is why what he has to say is actually really important, because he is a product of the very thing that I'm going to talk to us about today. So, Romans chapter 12. If you grew up in church, particularly if you grew up at Baxter, you have heard these verses before. But for some of us, they may be brand new. And we have to remember that this is a letter to God followers. Okay, so let's take a look. Romans 12, verse 1. This is what he says. Here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life. Take your sleeping, eating, going to work and walking around life. Take your whole life. Not just your mind, not just your intentions, not just an hour on Saturdays, but take your whole life and place it before God as an offering. It's important to remember that an offering to them had been a physical, bloody, gory sacrifice. But that system had now gone, and instead, Paul is saying to them, God wants your whole life. He says, embracing what God does for you is the best thing that you can do for him. Basically, he's saying it's not about killing animals anymore. It's about offering yourself. He's saying, I want you to be a living, daily, moment by moment offering. I want you to live in such a way that people will end up seeing God through you and through what you do. And he goes on to explain what this looks like. And here's where he gives us some amazing insight into our thinking. He says, don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. You see, if we adjust to our culture without even thinking, then we'll just look like everybody else. We'll live like everybody else. We'll have relationships like everybody else. We'll be in debt like everybody else. We'll be unhappy like so many people are. Our lives are easily swept into the flow of culture. So he's saying, look, just don't allow yourself to be swept away by your culture, to allow your culture to dictate your actions without even thinking. And then he gives us a bit of a contrast. He says, instead of doing that, I want you to fix your attention on God. You see, when we don't think, before we know it, we're just living and acting like everybody else. It's easy. It takes no discipline, it takes no self-control, no intentionality to adjust to our culture. But he says, I want you Christians to be different. I want you to fix your attention on God. And I'll tell you what happens when you do that. When you do that, you will change from the inside out. Readily recognize or rethink what he wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you and develops well-formed maturity in you. It's like he's saying, I want you to lean in, Papster. I want you to decide. I want you to rethink. I want you to put some effort in. I want you to make the decision to fix your attention on God. And when you do that, he will transform you. Who do you want to be? Don't just be stamped out like everybody else. You can be different. take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, walking around life, take your whole life and place it before God as an offering. In order for us to be able to do this, we have to do things different. We have to pay attention to what we're thinking so that when we look back and ask, what was I thinking? We'll actually take time to pause and we'll answer that question because we'll be transformed, not by willpower or self-control, but by renewing our mind, by taking time to rethink. To renew means to restore. Think of it like this. Have you ever restored a piece of furniture or something else? Have you ever seen the process or maybe been involved with restoring the finish or paint on a car? I happen to have a husband that has pretty much spent his whole life restoring stuff. From cars to boats to houses to furniture, he's restored the lot. So I have seen this a whole lot in my life. I've even been involved from time to time. And here's what I've learned. To refinish furniture, to refinish the surface or the paint job on a car, you have to take off the old before you put on the new. And taking off the old is a process, and it is not fun. When you've finished taking off the old, nobody walks up and says, wow, that looks fantastic. So why do we bother doing it? Why spend so much time and energy taking stuff off? Why give so much of our life to simply taking something off? Why not just go and put something new on top of it? I'm not sure what your church experience has been like, but for me, I don't know how many times I asked Jesus to come into my life when I was a kid, just in case he didn't the first time, or in case I did something wrong and thought, maybe if I pray longer, or maybe if I do this, it'll mean more, or I'm going to dedicate my way into a better future. But Paul says, you're not transformed by the dedication or the rededication of your life. You're transformed by the renewing of your mind. What happens if we put on the new before we take off the old? Well, the new peels right off, doesn't it? And this is what we say. In my next relationship, in my next job, next semester at uni, I'm going to do better. I'm going to study harder. I'm going to save more. I'm going to be less selfish next time round. And that new peels right off. Because we never took time to answer the question, what was I thinking? We just knew that we weren't thinking right and we moved right on to the next thing. And usually one of the reasons that we don't spend time with this is because renewal takes time. Renewing our mind takes time. And often we're simply trying to slap on the new, a new commitment, a new dedication, a new schedule, a new resolve, a new whatever. I mean, how many diet plans? Because this I know about, this I have experience with. How many diet plans have I abandoned after 3 weeks, or let's be honest, 3 days? And the problem wasn't that I wasn't committed. The problem was that I never broke bad habits before I tried to slap on a new diet. If we don't take off the old, the new will peel right off. And Paul says if you want to be transformed, it's not simply a matter of will. It's not just a matter of discipline. You've got to renew your mind. We need to hit pause. If you've been in a long-term relationship and things got unhealthy, please take time to renew your mind. We need time. We can't just slap on a new commitment, a new prayer, and download the Bible on our phone and think that we've got it sorted. That's good to do, but first we've got to peel off some old and answer the question, What was I thinking? But what if I meet the right person? The cold hard reality is that you're not ready for the right person because you are not the right person. Anytime we go through a big life change, don't make any big decisions for at least a year. Don't buy a new car. Don't move. Don't make any investments. Hit the pause button. Don't make any big decisions because we have to peel off some old before we put on some new. We need to rethink to renew, and that takes time. This is one of the reasons that we need a faith community. It's why we need a life group, because they are places where every week people talk about things that maybe we haven't thought about, and it helps us to renew our minds or to think differently. You see, when we listen to people's stories and experience life with them, we begin to renew our mind. We begin to think differently. We begin to bump up against false assumptions or things that we may have assumed our whole life that led us to places we don't want to go. Regret and resolve are not enough. We have to renew our mind, because if we think the way we used to think, we'll simply do what we've always done. So here's what we're going to do to finish, and we'll do this real quick. I'm going to give you 5 lethal assumptions. These assumptions often mess up our thinking, but no more for us, because we're going to know them. Okay, so here goes. 5 lethal assumptions. The first one: if I find the right person, everything will be all right. Life is not about finding. It's about becoming the right person. If we think that last relationship didn't work because he's an idiot, but if I find a non-idiot, if we don't take time to figure that out, we'll date another idiot. Committing isn't enough. Resolve is not enough. Becoming the right person is the goal. If we become the person that the person we're looking for is looking for, chances are we'll find them. Okay? Assumption number 2. My situation is unique. Hate to break it to you, it's not. Your situation is not unique. You are, but your situation is not. And here's why this matters. This assumption is how we dodge the rules. This assumption is how we dodge scripture. It's how we dodge wise advice. Assumption number 3. If only I had ... then I'd be satisfied. Appetites are never fully and finally satisfied, ever. The idea that if I had ... I'd be satisfied is a lie. No appetite, whether for a new car, new clothes, a new body, a new anything, no appetite is ever fully and finally satisfied. Because once we get whatever it is that we want another one. And it's okay to buy stuff, but don't fool yourself into thinking that once you get whatever it is, that you'll be satisfied, because you won't. Because appetites are never fully satisfied. Don't lie to yourself. Don't talk yourself into this based on the lie that once you have it, you'll be satisfied, because it's simply not true. The 4th lethal assumption is similar to that one, but it's this: I owe is better than I want. We don't probably think this consciously, but it runs around, I think, in the back of our financial thinking. I owe is better than I want. Because here's the deal. I want it, but in order to get it, I'll need to owe money on it. So what do? Do I sit around and want it, or do I drive it? Do I owe on it? Do I sit and want it, or will I wear it and owe on it? Do I sit around and want it, or do I say, oh well, and live in it? What will I live with? I want or I owe. And the fifth lethal assumption is my secret is safe with me. It really is not. Firstly, I just want to say that secrets are not good. Secrets are really unhealthy. When we take our secret into a relationship, it does not remain a secret. It just breaks hearts. Our secret isn't safe with us because secrets seep. Secrets seep into our most important relationships. You and your spouse and your alcohol problem, it's a bad threesome. Somebody will eventually have to go. You, your spouse, and your addiction, it was your safe secret. But eventually secrets seep and cause chaos. So don't lie to yourself. What were we thinking? It's not enough to simply ask this question. We have to answer it. And until we come up with an answer, we shouldn't start anything new. Don't jump back in, because until we've taken off the old, we'll never get where we want to go. Don't be absorbed into the culture of this world. Don't get stamped out into the pattern of this world, but instead be transformed. Not by commitment, not by trying really hard, but by rethinking, by renewing our mind. Because the good news is this: next time really can be better than last time. You know, the more I grow in my relationship with God, the more I am convinced that the most important thing I can do, my core responsibility as a Christ follower, is to renew my mind, to partner with the Holy Spirit and examine whether my thinking is truly biblical, or is it merely informed by my culture? Because what if we let go of the idea that our perspective is right all of the time? And instead of that, what if we looked at how Jesus lived? You see, Jesus abolished divisive thinking. He ended the conservative liberal divide. He healed on the Sabbath. He stood up for women. Yet he knew the Bible inside out. He preached in the synagogue. He prayed without ceasing. He followed the Holy Spirit, even if it meant rejecting the cultural and religious blueprint. He challenged the toxic thoughts that underpin the religious understanding of Scripture, replacing fear with love and freedom for all. Here's the hard-hitting reality. That's what we are called to do as well. The disconnect between belief and practice, it exists because we uphold an ideology and a culture, whether it be religious culture or popular culture or any other culture, over personal transformation with God. We would rather reject or upset people to uphold our often biblically unsupported cultural idea of Christianity than extend true love. The greatest commandment, to love God and our neighbour, is impossible unless we address our biases and our negative self-talk and choose instead to rethink and renew our minds. So together, my challenge to you is to make 2022 the year to rethink and to renew our minds.
Amen. Wow. Thank you so much, Karyn, for that awesome message and reminder that as Christians, we are called to constantly be renewing our thinking. And I just love that, and I think it's so fitting for the times we are in right now, and just for this beginning of kind of a new year. So thank you for the challenge, Karyn, and I'm sure all of us are going to put those things into practice this week. That's it for us today for Perhaps at Your Place Church. Again, thank you so much for joining us. It has been really good, and is always good to have you viewing and watching, and we really do appreciate it. Just a reminder again that we will be starting our 6-week trial of our new kind of format of doing things in small groups very soon, in the next couple of weeks. So if you haven't already had a chat with your life group, have that chat and figure out how and where and what time you're going to meet. If you aren't in a group and you're looking for one, there will be groups running at Papster on Sabbath. Make sure you keep an eye out for our e-update that comes out, and also you can always just get in touch with us at church and any one of our staff. But until we see each other again, church, which I hope will be very soon, stay safe, be kind, and remember to renew your thinking.